Lido questions, but I don't want anyone falling asleep. So if you have a question and you want to just ask live, put your hand up and we'll go there. So we've got, from last week, we've got Marianne and Marie. Would you guys like to come sit up? So Marianne's a GP and Marie is a junior doctor. We've got Farah, who's representing from the apologetics team this week. And we should have a third panelist, potentially running a little bit late. So we'll just crack on whilst we wait. Does anyone have any burning questions to kickstart things? No? Okay, we'll crack on then. Italy was lovely. I don't know why I'm back. Okay. The questions? Yes. Okay. I'll start from here. You guys ready? Okay. So let's start. So I think actually, Bish, you had a question from last time. I remember it. So I think, quote me if I'm wrong, okay? So I think the question was, okay, so. Okay, so I think the question was, there are 7 signs of life, right? Huh? You can't see me, that's fine, you don't need to see me, it's okay. I don't want to sit down, I've been sitting all day, it's fine. Okay, so there are 7 signs of life, and I think, what were they? I'll have to look them up, okay? So 7 signs of life, things like respiration, the senses, those kind of things. And if the fetus does not have those 7 signs of life, does it still count as a fetus? Did I word that correctly?
That's a really difficult question scientifically, because when an embryo is formed, it doesn't have the 7 signs of life. It develops as it progresses through the 9 months. So, yeah, I don't know how to answer that. I mean, people study that. It's a whole degree at university called embryology, where they study that for like 3 years. So, yeah, but in terms of the 7 signs of life, no, as soon as an embryo is formed, so when the sperm and the egg meet and they fertilize each other, no, you don't have the 7 signs of life. That's stuff that develops days, weeks, months into gestation. He's really like testing my science, like knowledge, you know.
If you could repeat your question.
So a single cell bacteria is alive, for example.
But an embryo doesn't stay as a single cell for very long, because already it's not a single cell. Already there's a sperm and an egg that meet, which are 2 separate kind of entities. When they meet, they almost immediately start to replicate. And then as they replicate, that's when the 7 signs that you were talking about start to form and appear. So your lungs, heart, your other major organs starts to form, your nervous system,
Yep.
et cetera, et cetera. So,
But bacteria is alive,
yeah, it is alive.
and it's 1 cell.
It is alive, but you're asking if life means that you have to have the 7 signs or the 7 whatever you
Yeah,
say.
agreed. It doesn't have to be, but
Yeah.
a single cell bacteria is alive, right?
But it's okay to kill a bacteria.
No, but it's alive.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, scientifically, yes.
If I have fused a sperm and an egg cell together,
Mhm.
I have formed a complete cell.
Yeah.
Hence, which is almost equivalent to a bacterial cell in terms of its DNA complete.
If you want me to get like really technical, a sperm has only 26 chromosomes,
Yep.
an egg only has 26
Yep.
or 23, whatever, I can't
23.
remember. But when they join, they form one complete chromosomal DNA picture or karyotype, and then they then replicate, and every new cell that's formed has that karyotype, so has the full 46
Yep.
chromosomes. So yes, but a bacteria, yes, it will have life, but you can't compare a bacteria to
Okay.
a mammal, I don't think.
Fair.
And if I may add, I think your 7 signs of life only are valid for humans, as far as I've been told. But so if you get the signs of them, like some of the organs, you will not find them in other species. Yeah.
So I'm trying to determine if a fertilized egg has life or not. That's essentially the question. Does a fertilized egg have life?
It's not on.
Yeah, yours is on.
Hello. Once it's fertilized, so let's say an embryo is formed, you can't actually see that. So let's say a lady's 2 weeks pregnant, you're definitely not going to see that. You can test for particular things in bloods and urine, etc., but you're not going to see that, and that's why they don't do tests up until sort of pretty early on. A fetal heartbeat is visible from about 7 weeks. So if that's what you want to say is sort of proof of life, we also use that as well to actually confirm if the fetal heart is beating. So it's there, it's just not visible. So it depends on what you're wanting to classify as life. But life has happened from the second the embryo is formed. It's just dependent on what you're wanting to then add to that to then determine whether life is sort of viable, if you like.
Okay, are we ready to move on? Okay, this is an interesting one. Are different forms of ending life viewed? Hello? There we go. Okay, are different forms of ending life viewed equally? I.e., is abortion viewed the same way as the death penalty?
Oh, that's for me. Okay. Yes, I guess different ways. Oh gosh. I guess you need to think about the root of your question. Think about the root of your question. The death penalty is about someone's gone to trial and it's for a crime. And whereas abortion, there is nothing that this life that is coming into world has done. So I'd say they are very different situations. And I would say they're incomparable. Yes, Clara?
Yeah, in the eyes of God, is it equal or is it different? Because a life is life, I think, and we can't judge. So yeah.
Yeah, I I would still say they're different, and maybe I would also pass on to Abuna on this question.
بصي, any external decision of someone deciding to kill someone is not under God's knowledge. It's not what God probably wants. So if you can take it on different levels, things like wars, and people are killing each other in wars and things like that. At what point do we say it's a human action versus God's will? God doesn't want people to die prematurely. The only difference is when you have a lawful government that is saying something and we are abiding by it. We don't have a choice except to abide by it. Same thing as we say, you have a judge who says, you owe Mark Massan 10 grand. If the judge says that, fine. I mean, even though it might be insanely, you've been lying to a judge or whatever, but at the end of the day, if you owe that person, that is what the judge says. So, in the eyes of the church, or the eyes of God, that's a decision made by a higher power. You don't have a choice in it. But abortion, you have a choice in it. You are making that choice. You are making that decision of aborting that child or not.
Mark Howie, you had a question. He put his hand up.
Sure. So are you saying that, let's go with the death penalty, for example, that's not okay?
Any premature end of life is not okay. But the owners of the sin on who is different. So if I end up saying a girl or a lady or whatever is choosing to abort her child, that's her choice. So who instigated is one thing and who is executing is another thing. So if the judge says that person is put to death, that's his choice. He made that decision. Even if that person doesn't want to die, he doesn't have a choice. He will still die because the judge said so. So what I'm looking at is who is making that decision, who is instigating that decision.
Do you think an argument could be made which essentially goes as thus? The main premise is God's sovereign will determines the day of our birth and the day of our death. Regardless of human action, wherever the human action is that leads to either a birth or death, that is God's sovereign will. I'm not saying it to justify any kind of killing, regardless of how it's done, but I think the argument is pretty solid. So I suppose my issue, sorry, just to clarify, I suppose my issue is that nothing is, when it comes to birth and death, nothing is premature.
Okay. God's sovereign knowledge, not God's sovereign will. God knows when I'm going to be born and when I'm going to die. But still, if I end up smoking really, really badly and I shorten my lifespan because I'm really, really choosing to make these decisions, he still knows that I'm going to die earlier because of this. He would wish that actually I don't do this and I die longer. But the free will comes in to say, I'm going to give you this time and this time. And I know you're going to shorten by this, so I know you're going to die on this time. So his knowledge is sovereign. Will is defined by sometimes by my choices of what I do.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I'm going to save the TOP question for a bit later. Okay, this is going back to a discussion that we had last week. Sorry, can you hear me? In what ways can Christians understand and approach suffering as a mystery rather than seeking to avoid it or end it permanently. Oh, sorry, end it prematurely.
Hello, yes. Suffering. Suffering, the definition of suffering is acceptance. And so the first thing we do when we are in pain is first we have to accept the pain. And then we enter suffering. And there's this mysterious, if we accept the pain, there is this mysterious way in which we go through it and become incredibly much more closer to God. So the question is, in what way can Christians understand their suffering? So I think that the first step is acceptance. And I think it's easy to say here at a table, not in any pain, but it's something we have to help each other with and through. And pain isn't just physical, it's total pain. Dame Cicely Saunders kind of described that so well. It's spiritual, relational, emotional, and physical. And you have to address all those 4 aspects of your life to be able to kind of process that physical, that pain and that suffering. So it's through relationships, through being kind of with each other, through spirituality, through lamenting to God, crying out to Him, expressing the anguish, expressing your anger to Him, and having that open space to do that and to come to Him with your pain and with your suffering. And it's emotional. It's not about bottling it up and just kind of carrying on. It's applying, it's recognizing the emotion and kind of sitting with it, and then taking steps to go to take the next steps in your life in through the suffering. I don't know if that's helped. Yes.
Okay, thank you. Yes, sorry. This is another question. It's not related to this, sorry. This is just... Sorry, it's just another question. This is more for like the medical side. If I was diagnosed with something that I know the medication is something I don't want to do. So say if I had cancer and I don't want to do chemotherapy. I know like you can take the pills now and it's a lot easier than people think. But if I really didn't want to, and I just really didn't want to take the medication, and I thought for my peace of mind it's better for me to not take the medication and go through that mental anguish of taking the medication, do you think is it selfish of me to do that? Or do you think, like, is there ethics in that? Like, what do you think?
As a doctor, I have to make sure that you have all the information you need in order to make that decision, and that decision is made with all the information that you need, so that you're able to make what we call an informed decision, okay? So if you decide to refuse treatment, that's absolutely fine. Some people may then want to question whether you're of sound mind to make a decision like that. And if you are of sound mind to make a decision like that, then the next step as a medical professional would be to support you in that decision. So although you might not want cancer treatment, unfortunately there will be consequences of your disease. And my role, or our role as medical professionals, would be to support you through that. So if it's pain, and you need pain management, it would be to support you with that. If you're struggling to eat and drink, it would be to kind of, again, support you with things like that. So from a medical point of view, you are entitled to make a decision about your treatment, specifically refusing treatment. It's different if you are requesting treatment. That's the truth. Yeah, it's different if you're requesting treatment, but in terms of refusal of treatment, yeah, as long as you have capacity and you've been given all the information you need, yeah, you're absolutely within your rights to make that decision. And you can change your mind as well.
I can. Thank you. Wouldn't that be more of a headache for the medical profession? Because assuming someone is going through this, and then they collapse, they're going to come back at you, and you're trying to really treat them, even though they refuse to treat. And you think, if you just have agreed to do the easiest thing bit in the beginning, it would be 10 times easier for all of us. Like, would you almost judge them because of this? Because they're giving you a hard time, even though you could have easily fixed it?
So when I first qualified, that was something that I found really hard to kind of come to grips with. I'm like, but you know this thing is going to make you better. Why aren't you doing it? But I think the more I experience different people and their different walks in life, we call it empathy, so putting myself in their shoes. Yeah, you kind of understand that people make decisions for lots of different reasons, and it's not my role to judge that decision, but it's my role to support them, but also allow them the space to change their mind if they want to. Because if I was to judge them, they may not feel able to come back to me if things change or if they change their mind. I think we're very similar.
Just speaking it. Hello. Okay. Since we're on this topic, what's the Christian point of view if, say, you have cancer and then you refuse treatment? Is that a way of refusing, like, okay, you have cancer, right? And then if you don't want to continue suffering, because obviously part of the chemotherapy, you're still sort of suffering, and a lot of people choose not to because it's not 100% can cure you. So you're probably gonna, you may live the remainder of your life obviously going through treatment. So if you refuse that, is that refusing almost God's help, or is it almost going against God's plan of a blessing in the sickness? And also, if that's the case, for example, if a woman can't get pregnant and then she has to do IVF, is that also going against God's plan of you not being able to conceive children? Do you understand where I'm going with this? Like, is it how? I know, but it's like giving another example, because like we've obviously got like science and medicine to be able to sort of reverse effects, not obviously 100%, but what is the sort of?
I mean, the church is not there to judge us. It's not here, the church or the priest, Abuna, is not there to judge people. If somebody comes to me and will say, Abuna, I don't want to go through all of this headache, I want to just, if God gives me cancer, I'm going to accept it, khalas. We work with, like I said before on the last week, we work with a professional. We ask the person why, and let's try and do things the right way. There are tribulations we come across, but Christ has asked us to overcome them with the power of God. So that sort of, I want to sit down and do nothing. Even spiritually, we don't accept this as an option to some extent. We always encourage people to do something about it. So, and it's not out of judgment, out of encouragement. So we always encourage people, if there is an opportunity that we do the right thing and gain what we want to do, or what we want to gain in the right way, we do it. Otherwise, if somebody comes and say, Abuna, I don't feel like going to work, I'm going to just sit here and just enjoy the little saving I have. It's exactly as I would say, no. You need to go out, and the Bible even said, if you don't work, you don't eat. No, you need to go and put the effort and get better the children of God are the children of success. Like you're always there and try and have victory. So you always encourage people to be better and to feel better and to achieve more, and because that's what God gave us, victory. If then God gave us something that we can't cure or we can't do anything about it, fine, we still, as Farah said, we still accept what God gave us. We work with it, we work with the best out of it. If He has given us an opportunity to adopt, to IVF, to whatever, we will do that. But I know what the limitation I have, I work with it and within it, and it's absolutely fine. If there is nothing in front of me to work with, I will work with what God gave me, and I will be accepting of His will. And if new medicine comes tomorrow, we'll try it tomorrow. It's absolutely fine.
But Abuna, what if that is, like, there's treatment that just prolongs and then there's treatment that cures, right? And if you want to say, oh, this is the natural progression of life, technically the natural progression would be they would have just died at that point, regardless of, giving them an extra few weeks. So what you're really doing is prolonging the suffering rather than prolonging the life. Like, what are you prolonging the life for if that body that's been ordained by God just wants to stop anyway? Like, what is the point?
The point is, so we work on 3 levels. We work on, of course, the physical part, and we work with the medical team on that one. So that's like the body. But the other 2, actually, we work very hard with them, which is spiritually. If that person is spiritually mature, and actually they say, I want to go with Christ, I'm actually ready, and they are praying, they are accepting, they are not resenting the illness and everything else, keep going, khalas, absolutely fine. But if the person saying, look, khalas, I can't, you work with them, as well as psychologically. How are they feeling about it? Either feel oppressed, do they actually have resentment towards God? Why me? So you work with all of that in a positive way. You try to find out actually what's going on so you can actually work with them. And at the end of the day, you give them advice. How they choose to do after is down to them. If they end up refusing all treatment, khalas. The church has nothing against them because you give them all the tools, all the things that they need to do, and we encourage them to continue or like to do it the right way. We never stop supporting them, but at the end of the day, it's their choice. What they want to do, they do it.
It reminds me, I think it was Tamav Arini.
She's a different league.
She's another league, but I think she was very ill towards the end of her life, and she refused treatment. She was in hospital and she refused everything, but I think there was one miracle after the other, keeping her on earth with us. It's as Abuna said, there's a balance. There's a balance between our spiritual strength and our and the science that God has given us. This isn't something that's purely man-made, and it's wrong. It's a gift from God, and it's there for us to use if and when we can. 100%.
All right, so we'll go towards more the gynae stuff. How are we defining life, beginning and end? How does the medical definition differ from the church?
We did answer that last week, but I think Abuna said that the church says the beginning of life is at conception, whereas medically, life begins at birth.
Okay. Sorry, I forgot that we did that last week. Okay, where was the other juicy one? I can't, but basically, okay. What is the, I feel like I'm opening up a can of worms, I'll find it on here. Church views on morning after pill, so emergency contraception. So for those who don't know what emergency contraception is, it's if someone has had unprotected sexual intercourse and they are not covered with any form of contraception. Yes, we're adults, we can say these words. There are certain medications that you use within a certain time limit, usually up to 5 days, to make sure you don't get pregnant afterwards. So, over to the panel.
So there is a consultant on his way coming, and funny enough, I had this conversation with him. So, as far as I understand, and medical people, please correct me if I'm wrong, fertilization or conception happen within maximum 48 hours of having sex. So it can be from few hours to 48 hours. The morning after can be longer. 72 hours, yeah, maybe. خلاص خليها 4 days 3 days up to 72 hours roughly, and any intervention at the time doesn't stop the ovulation, or not ovulation, the fertilization, that's the word, the fertilization. The morning after pill stops the embryo to be attached to something, the implantation. Okay, so if the fertilization is, or if the life starts at fertilization, that's where life starts. Whether it gets attached or not, whether we prevent it from being attached or not, that's a completely different conversation.
So there's 3 main types of emergency contraception in the UK that is available. 2 of them are tablets. One of them is a coil. The tablets stop fertilization, so they stop the egg and the sperm meeting. So I guess then, in theory, technically they're not ending life because life hasn't been conceived yet. The coil stops ovulation, but if ovulation has already happened, it interferes with implantation. But the medical definition of emergency contraception is that it does not disturb established implantation. So it doesn't, if the fertilized egg has attached to the womb and the placenta is starting to grow and form, emergency contraception doesn't interfere with that. But according to the church, we say that life begins at conception. So yes, there are some types of emergency contraception that will interfere with that, i.e. they will stop this fertilized egg from attaching to the womb. Does that make sense? Yeah.
So Abuna, just to clarify, so which one is the one that's okay? Okay, I was just asking for the other people. No, I can hear you, it's fine.
What's your question again, sorry?
What is so you said there's 3 types. So is the one that doesn't interfere with
implantation?
Yeah, so is that one technically okay?
No, the one that's technically okay is the one that stops fertilization. Okay. The problem with these things, it becomes very difficult because the human body, in as much as we think is very engineering, like most engineers we think day 1 is something happened, day 2 something happened, day 3 something happened. When it comes to the human body, the possibilities are endless. So it becomes very, very difficult to say, okay, someone had intercourse at 6 p.m. Actually, fertilization happened at 7:20. Nobody knows that. So when the person takes that medication, it's almost like generic antibiotic. You are trying just to wipe everything out there. If it has been fertilized, okay, khalas. If it hasn't been fertilized, okay, let's try to stop it. It becomes almost very generic. So unless you know exactly which one you take, or the person takes, then becomes, yes, specific, and you know what happened. The fact that we don't know becomes almost a gray area. So that's why we explain the genetic part. If it is fertilized, it is an abortion. If it's unfertilized, it's not an abortion.
I'd like to hear Marie's thoughts on the matter. Of the 3 forms of contraception that have been mentioned, what do you think? Okay, I need to frame this correctly. From a medical perspective, let's go medical. From a medical perspective, what is the most acceptable, the least invasive, or the least damage to any individual? I mean, is there any damage? Because I know, for example, I've had the coil. Some people have had some issues with the coil in the past, and it causes issues and what have you. The morning after pill, some people have complained that it messes up the cycle or whatever. I have no idea what I'm talking about, really. And the other forms of medication I've just completely forgotten. So I'm sure there are some issues with that. From a medical perspective, so 2 questions. From a medical perspective, if someone found themselves in a position in which they required some sort of emergency contraception, what would you advise? I suppose the coil isn't an emergency, but whatever.
It is.
Oh, man.
Sorry.
Okay.
So I think it depends on, so this is when the woman is meant to be informed of the pros and cons of each. So if you take the oral form, so the tablet form, and that is to delay ovulate. So this is under the condition that she has not yet ovulated. So if she has ovulated, the morning after pill does not work. If she has not yet ovulated and it is to be taken for emergency contraceptive purposes, and that's what she wants to do, fine. The aftermath is then further discussions about what she should be using as contraception to move on or to move forward. If she opts to have the coil, yes, that's obviously invasive because that goes into the womb. The copper's it's basically like a toxic environment, so that the female can continue having, if she so wishes to have, ongoing unprotected sex, then she can do so. And then once that's in situ, she can just continue having. That's now a definitive form of contraception for her. So it's just dependent on if she wants to take it right there and then, and she's able to, then fine, she can take the oral tablet. If she wants ongoing contraception, and for it to be used as an emergency contraceptive purpose, then she can also just have the coil inserted.
Do you find that the ethical considerations in doing so, I mean, it's your role, but do you find there are any ethical considerations that you should take into account, or that you are asked to take into account?
For contraception?
Yeah.
No. Ethical in terms of about the sanctity of life?
So I suppose so. I mean,
I think the biggest ethical question here would be if a woman keeps having unprotected sexual intercourse and she keeps coming back either for emergency contraception or an abortion, that then will raise a massive ethical question there. Actually, are we informing this lady of what her options are, and what are we doing to prevent this from happening like repetitively? Because there is always going to be physical consequences to any artificial treatment that we give for her physical health, but also for her mental health. So yeah, that would probably be the biggest ethical question that arises from that, I would say. I don't know.
Okay, just to give you an idea, Professor Rabi Atallah is with us here, and he's head of gynecology, I think, in Leicester. and he just came especially for us. I'm sorry we dragged you we dragged you a long time ago, so thank you, and congratulations, Sarah.
No, I think I'm happy for any question. I mean, Abuna, we had a chat on the phone earlier. I'm sorry for being late. Today was Sarah's graduation, so it just came up from the college. She's now a member of the college, so she knows about it as much as I am. So yeah, any question? I'm very open to that. I think Abuna has said everything about it, but go for it.
So, church opinion on maternal indications for termination of pregnancy versus fetal indications for termination of pregnancy.
I don't understand the question.
So reasons for abortion, in terms of mother's health being at risk, versus if the baby's got health problems, and if the church, which there's a the difference between church opinion between why we would allow abortion in either case.
Right, so if you allow me, I will summarize it very quickly, but again, Sarah is up to date compared with mine. So in 1965, there was the new rules. Correct me on the date, Sarah, if you can, or anybody can correct me on that. There was the rules about the government giving laws about the legality of termination of pregnancy. And until 4 years ago, that rules was going that you have to have two opinions about the legality of termination of pregnancy. The two opinions have to be doctors, and there's a form called the blue form that have to be signed up according to the law of 1965. It's very interesting because the two doctors who signed, they put a statement that I have seen or not seen, examined or not examined the patient below. So technically, you can give a rule for a termination of pregnancy without even seeing the patient, without even talking to the patient, putting your hands on the patient. But anyway, so you have two people, so that you can see how it is. And then you had 5 causes for the termination of pregnancy. So the first A, B, C, D, E, the first one is moms is at risk for serious risk, harm to the mom if the pregnancy to continue. The second one is there is considerable risk to the mom. I'll come to C, and then I'll come to, just let me miss C at the moment, go to the other two, D and E, which is considerable harm to the baby, that baby will not survive, or that there is considerable for the baby when he's born, that there's a problem with the baby. But the C was the interesting thing, which is actually the continuation of the pregnancy carries more risk to the baby or to the mom compared with termination of pregnancy. So in other words, if you terminate the pregnancy, if the lady is, just guess, 10 weeks, 12 weeks pregnant, and you are asked, is the continuation of pregnancy carry more risk than the continuation is more risk than the termination? The answer in any book is yes. In any pregnancy, in anything. So if a lady gets pregnant, her risk of having high blood pressure, preeclampsia, dying, bleeding in theaters, bleeding during delivery, this is all risks that she carry for the pregnancy and the delivery more than the termination. So any lady, any pregnancy falls into that category of C. And A, B, and C is below 24 weeks pregnant. So technically, any pregnancy falls under C. And that means that any pregnancy can be terminated legally. You're not allowed to say socially. This is not acceptable. We don't do social termination in the UK. But if a lady have a risk, that all the pregnancy will have that risk. Now, what's the church opinion of that? Well, I got the priest here, so I can't really say. I can say what the medical opinion is. I can't say what the church's opinion is. Sorry? I will skip the social opinion at the moment. I can't say that, but let me say what's the legality as well of that, is that none of the gynecologists or the GPs or any doctor in the UK, any doctor in the UK can choose to be involved in that matter or not. So in other words, there is a doubt about the acceptability of such termination in the medical profession, that the government will give a rule that you can opt out of sharing in that, provided that you provide another way for this lady to seek advice. So if a lady comes to me and say, I want to terminate, and I morally don't think I should, then I can say, no, I'm not sharing in that, in a nice way, that, look, you got the right to go to seek advice, but you can go to Dr. X or Mr. X or Miss X, that she will help you through. And that's why there is services for termination of pregnancy everywhere in the country, while there is nearly half of the population of gynecologists don't do termination of pregnancy. There is, on the leaving the legality point of view, coming to the church point of view, and again, I cannot speak in that, but if you categorize it, that's all. I can divide it into something very simple. We got dilemmas in the pregnancies that are actually quite serious, which is a pregnancy that has carried on, and the baby will not continue the pregnancy. In other words, we are fully aware that this pregnancy will not be delivered for one reason or another, because baby is severely handicapped, but it's alive now. So in other words, I can have somebody with, I don't want to go medically too much, but there is lots of trisomy 13, 18, lots of chromosome error, where we know 100% this baby will not be born. He will not make it at 20 weeks or 30 weeks or 38 weeks, but will not be born. So would you terminate earlier or not? That's a question. This baby will not be born. We are 100% sure, never been. And there's another things where the baby have severe malformation, but can be born, like Down syndrome babies that we all hear about. Sorry, I'm speaking English. I'm sure you got it in Arabic as well, the same wording. Down syndrome baby, cerebral palsy, spina bifida. You know what I mean? Those conditions where the baby can be born, but will be severely handicapped. And those are the two dilemmas of the church, I think, more than a dilemma of if the pregnancy is healthy and you carry on that song. So I will leave those three categories. They're not the medical category, but I will leave them to Abuna to answer on those ones on.
Don't do it. As I said last week, I mean, the church takes guidance from the profession. So if the baby will not be born, I think the church leaves it until, okay, we say, keep it until that it's gonna become harmful for the mother. So, and this is where, because we are not gonna sacrifice the mother, especially as well as the baby. So, and the doctors, I love what I love about the doctors. They are very blunt. They said to you, by that threshold, it's gonna start having a risk on you. You should start the process. The church say, "Khalas, it's fine." When it comes to the baby will be born with severe deformity or something like that. This is where we check the spiritual and the psychological level of the mother as the father, and the supporting network around the family, and we start seeing, will mom and father or mom alone be able to support the child? Sometimes even moms have some disabilities, so it becomes very, very difficult. The church say, the preference for the church always with sanctity of life. We always keep everybody alive. That's the main thing. Whenever we start having bad risk or problems or things like that, this is when the church exercise some discretion in different opinions about what we can do or not. But the general streamline of the church, sanctity of life. We have to keep all lives, mother, father, children, everyone, as much as we can. Everyone, provide God give them life, we preserve that life. It's not on a selfish level, or I don't want to have this child, or I can't have the means to support a child. Yeah, I remember back in my church in Egypt, we had a family who had an unplanned pregnancy, and they're really below poverty level. So the church said, you know what? To keep that child alive, the church will support that child, but just leave him alive. And actually, that child became, نشكر ربنا, يعني finished their education, and they started to support the whole family because they actually worked really, really hard. So the main aim of the church is to continue the blessing that God has given us and to support the lives.
Yes, you. So we've established what the definition of life is, right? Scientifically and by the church's standards. However, if there is a fetus that is sort of found to have these chromosomal abnormalities, what are you, so church, life is, so, okay, fine, we know what it is, as I said, scientifically and by the church's standards, but what if this child is not able to have an acceptable quality of life? So yes, they will be born, and yes, they will be alive, but this child is not going to have a quality of life by anyone's standards. So yes, I appreciate that we should respect the sanctity of life, but if I equally understand that this child will not have a life, well, quality of life, why are we now enabling a child and its parents potentially to suffer? And then as a medical professional, when I am in that situation and someone comes to me saying, right, what do you think? And I actually do believe that this child probably should be, this pregnancy should be terminated. How do you advise us to, how do you advise us to act in a situation where I actually agree that this child will not have a quality of life, and therefore think that it's actually better for this child to not come into the world? Because I think what's different about it is when you see, for example, in neonatal ITU, when you see these, yes, they're alive, fine, they're alive. This is not alive. Like when you see babies that have got half a skull or really, really extreme deformities where you're like, okay, and they've got a plethora of tubes coming out of them and they're being vented. It's actually very, in my opinion, I find that quite cruel. So, yeah, well, are we just allowing it just because we've said this is the sanctity of life, but equally there is no life that's attached to this fetus?
Anyone wants to answer?
Can I just...
Please.
Please. Let me just get to this point a little bit about the quality of life versus life. Okay. Let's start by the beginning by two definitions that we need to know. The variable definitions of the quality of life and the personal definition of the quality of life. So I cannot ever overemphasize or deny the stress of the parents they go through, ever. You know what I mean? I've been in those situations myself. And it's really difficult. Yeah, so it's really, really difficult decision to take. So from personal point of view, the parents are going through a horrendously hell and back, yeah, because that's their loved child. And it's very difficult for anybody who have not been in that situation to understand how stressful they were. So this have to be very important. The other which is very important is the definition of quality of life, which you mentioned chromosomals, but my main worry is not chromosomals. Let's say it's something like Down syndrome, as we know it. The quality or the mental capability of that child is variable. Nobody can tell you this baby will come up and be able to reach the age of 7 or age of 50, and whether he'll be able to do basic tasks or nothing at all, or completely not with it. So I went to institution where Down syndrome are raised in Egypt, and they're doing all the clips that you have for hanging your clothes on the line, you know, yeah, and they're sensible. And there is on the same institution, people are sitting there hitting their head on the wall, and I'm seriously, physically sitting, hitting their head on the wall all the day long. And you can imagine the amount of screaming that they do, they're screaming. And so it's really horrendous to be having this kind of stuff. But medical profession cannot tell you which child will come to be this or that. That's from chromosomal point of view. From physical point of view, it's even worse. So I'll tell you experience of my cousin. She's in Australia, Melbourne, and she was told to terminate because her chance of survival less than 5%. She got a single ventricle heart. So the heart got one ventricle. Definitely the baby will be completely unwell. At least he needs reoperation, if not heart transplant. And they had the opinion of the priests. Sorry, Abuna, you were not there in Melbourne. And yet, some priests had, so this is medical priests, doctors. So this is really not compatible at all with life. Now she got her child. So she's now 35, 40 years old, and she got her child. Despite the decision was at one time from the parent to terminate, and they decided not to. So quality of life from our medical profession, we can sometimes give instance, say, look, we expect to be 1% better, 5%, 10%. It's very difficult to quantify that point. And I will jump to neonatal unit. Those are already born. If you're going to decide on the quality of life of a neonate being born, and now I can judge more better that this baby will not have quality of life. He's born. So we go to a different scenario. It's when you're going to withdraw treatment or not. And then you're going to stretch that to the adulthood. We had the discussion, again, quite often, about your grandma, your granddad, who's not with it. Would you stop resuscitating? Would you stop doing that? So it's a variable, a gray area. And you can imagine if you got a mother or a father who is actually not well, needing care, wetting themselves, wetting the beds, incontinence, all you can imagine, and they're not with it at all. How much stress on the family as well. So it's a variable decision that you're going to take it. I just want to clarify about life. When does it start? Are you going to stop life at birth? So now they are neonates are different, or before birth. And the American definition at one time that babies below delivery, so just even 9 months below delivery, have no right at all. So if the mom decides to smoke or not smoke, whatever, and harm the baby had no right. There's different from definition that baby have right. And some of the American states now, they went in that the baby have rights, so they can go and jail the mom if the mom take any drugs that will affect the baby. So if she's a drug addict that affect the baby got right, so then you have to tell the mom, no, you shouldn't do that so you don't harm the baby. So I just want to clarify the variability from conception till death and where you're going to take the cutoff point. But there is two other variables, which is we cannot judge as medical professional the severity of the case. As much as we can say, but we are not very accurate in that until now in most of the cases. And take care does not being dictated only until pre-delivery, but also post-delivery.
بص يعني I agree طبعا scientific part nothing to do with me يعني, but I think as both sides, whether the church or the doctors, are providing the family with all the tools for them to make the decision that works with them and suits them. There are people who, you work with them. If somebody comes to me and they are smokers and they can't stop, I can give them an exception. Say, okay, you can have communion, but try not to smoke straight away after, like stay 2 hours. Or actually don't smoke 5 hours before communion, because that's their maximum. So the church can exercise some exceptions in various areas. Does the exception become the rule? No. depending on the person, spiritual level, abilities, lots of things. So the church, what we're discussing here on the panel is the generic rules, generic streamlined church. We preserve life, we keep life. Are there exceptions? Maybe there are there exceptions? Yeah, and usually that's why within the clergy we have doctors who were like before they become priests, so they understand even more than someone without a medical background like me. So we tend to refer them, say, okay, guys, you ask, if somebody comes to me, I say, go to Abuna Shnuda, go to Abuna Tumas, Abuna Loa. People with background, and some of them even were medical doctors, like gynecologists before they become priests. So actually they have much better understanding of the situation.
I think the question you raised about quality of life is really, really important, and it kind of goes to the heart of all the discussions around abortion and euthanasia and assisted suicide. How I see that topic is I think about art restoration, and when you take, for example, a Michelangelo statue or painting, or recently the Notre Dame, and how it kind of was destroyed, art historians and restorationists would do anything and everything to repair it. Even if they couldn't repair it, that every single piece would be kind of collected, saved, displayed. Life isn't about our abilities or our disabilities or what we can do and what we can't do. It's about it's about our Creator, our quality of life, or life itself is a reflection of Him. So any form of harm to humanity is a direct desecration of the image of God. That's why the church holds such strong kind of views in these topics, because we are talking about the image of God here. This infinite being who's lovingly created every single one of us. And I would go even, we say life begins at conception. You could even take it further before that. You could say life has begun from a thought, from God's thought. He thought us into existence. I see it as in architecture. A building doesn't start from laying foundations. It started years and months ago with the first drawing, which was completely a hypothetical stage. But that's when it started, and that's where, and that's kind of, I'm probably going down a rabbit hole here now, but that's where life is, and that's where we shouldn't be assessing quality by our abilities. I think that's what happened when the secular world has taken God out of the equation. But as soon as you reinsert Him, every single life is so important and beautiful.
Was that a verse about before you were born in something like that في أشعياء؟ ما أعرفش بالإنجليزي دي بالعربي. قبل كفك بالضبط يعني. I engraved you on my hand before you were born. Sorry?
Before I formed you, I knew you. The last of Jeremiah.
Of course, we'll see. I think what you said is so beautiful, Haiti. But I think if I will go with that, means every single person, they will have lots of thoughts about when to engage with these things. That's why the church make it easier and very clear-cut line, conception, life, don't mess about with it.
Anyone else got any questions? No? Cool.
I don't think actually my dad answers Dulegi's question very well. I'm going to add something. I'm going to make it a bit more black and white. Can you ask that question again about mum versus baby?
The question was what's the church's opinion varying from reasons, so maternal indications, so that basically means when mum's life is at risk, so it's a reason why doctors are telling mum your health is at risk, so we want you to terminate, versus when doctors are at risk, doctors are saying to them, baby has some form of abnormality that, and we're recommending termination, or would you consider termination?
There's actually a really black and white answer to the mum thing. So actually people don't realize it, but as gynecologists we terminate pregnancies all the time. And there's actually another 2 clauses to the Abortion Act, which is F and G, which don't actually need 2 doctors to agree on, because F means you need to terminate this pregnancy to save this woman's life, and G means you need to terminate this pregnancy to prevent serious, grave injury to this woman. And I don't know if everyone knows what an ectopic pregnancy is, but an ectopic pregnancy is a pregnancy that's not growing inside the womb, it's actually growing outside the womb, so lots of people call it an unhealthy pregnancy. So the most common place you can get this ectopic pregnancy is in the tube that follows into the womb. Now this actually we operate on all the time. This is a fertilized egg. This is a baby that's still alive most of the time with a heartbeat, that is stuck in a woman's tube, but it can kill the woman if it's not removed. So there are actually really, in my opinion, very black and white scenarios where actually we need to remove a pregnancy to save a woman's life. And we do this all the time, like multiple times a week. So that's one thing to bear in mind. So yes, we have to realize the sanctity of life begins from conception. However, we're taught as clinicians that number 1 comes the life of the mother, and number 2 comes the life of the baby. And anything that puts threat to the life of the mother, we really have to seriously think about how we care for this woman. Another thing that's more recent is COVID. During the pandemic, we had women dying or women close to death's door because they were carrying a pregnancy, because when you're carrying a pregnancy, the way your body works, physiologically speaking, is completely overstretched and overtired. Put COVID on top of that, and that woman could die before she's reached 20 weeks of pregnancy. And we had women going to ITU, literally almost cardiac arrest, and we had to decide, are we going to essentially terminate this 20-week baby to save this woman's life? So these are things that actually we come across quite frequently that we have to think about. So for me personally, we've come across this problem all the time. And yeah, we always have to think, do we save this woman or do we save this baby? And a lot of the time, you can't save the baby without saving the woman. Because if the woman dies, the pregnancy doesn't continue anyway. Does that make sense? Fine. So I think that's the black and white area that I was talking about. The gray area comes with what you were talking about, where you have a woman that's had some scans, had investigations, and it shows a significant abnormality in that baby. Whether it's genetic, chromosomal, anatomical, you've had babies that show half a brain. They're growing inside the womb, with half a brain, or the skull hasn't formed. A lot of people say this is not compatible with life, terminate this pregnancy. Technically speaking, that baby could be born alive. It could be born alive, but very rarely do they live beyond a few hours of life or a few days of life. And therefore, that's where it's a gray area where Abuna has already answered. Do we terminate this pregnancy while the woman's pregnant to avoid the stress, the pain that comes with the delivery and the death of a baby? Or, because we believe in the sanctity of life, do we continue the pregnancy, deliver the baby? We know the baby's going to die. Do we go through that pain because we believe that life begins from conception? That's something that's very unique to each individual and each couple. And that's where you really, really need to speak to your father of confession, to people with the professional and clinical knowledge behind these scenarios to really understand your unique position, because you don't realize, but there's a huge spectrum of fetal abnormalities that you can come across in life. And they're so variable in terms of prognosis as well. So that's where it's a really difficult question to answer.
Just clarifying one point. I know you're taking lots of your time. UK will not allow social termination. Let's put it this way. You can go to court for social termination. You don't do social termination. Is the wording is the continuation of the pregnancy carry more harm to the mom than termination of the pregnancy? Yes, I know, I agree with you. It takes lots of pregnancy, or all the pregnancy with that level, yeah, but it's not social, okay? That's just the wording. I'm just trying to correct it, the grammatical or vocabulary error. The second thing, which is important, I re-emphasize on the same point, we give advice. We give advice. I don't wish on earth any of you to be in a position like this. I cannot foresee it. 30 years ago, I was in Birmingham, maternity, and I was delivering a baby anencephalic. Anencephalic means has no brain. This place does not exist. It's not like there's no skull, nothing. So this baby will not survive. And difficult to deliver that baby because he cannot be in the right position, he cannot come normal. He had to do a cesarean section, and I had to do that cesarean section. I remember that very well. What I was surprised about, Birmingham women had a series of helicopters flying around on that day because the couple decided to donate the heart, the cornea, the liver, everything when the baby is born. And he has saved 7 lives. So everybody was waiting the minute I delivered the baby so I can start taking the liver. The baby will not survive a few minutes. And they had a few minutes to take the kidneys, both kidneys, livers. Definitely liver will have helped many people. Heart were particularly crucial because it's very difficult to have a donation of a heart. Very difficult for a neonate. And certainly, for me, it was shocking. I didn't want to be in the position of that couple, to see baby born and then your baby being cut off. You know the baby will be cut off to pieces. So those are traumatic to us as doctors. Very traumatic, and very traumatic as well to the couple. I don't wish you in that position. And I'm not sure the church opinion would be. But as a doctor, I will back up that couple if they say terminate. I will have great respect to them, and I will bow in front of them if they say I will continue and donate. I cannot decide, but I can tell you this baby will not survive. I can tell you that. So I don't wish. I'm just saying that really is a very personal issue. Yeah, very personal.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. So thank you, Marianne, Marie, Farah, Warner, Uncle, Sarah. Thank you for all helping us out today. So that concludes our series. Next week we have a play, I think. Mickey's doing one of his famous saints plays, so I'm not sure which saint, so you might get a call this week if it's your saint for the play. This Sunday we've got YAM Sunday. We're concluding the My Lord, My God series. So 12:45 YAM room. We've got it's coming up so quickly now. The Reading retreat, so not this weekend, coming next weekend, 20th to 22nd of September. I believe prices have gone up, but please, guys, if you haven't booked, do book. If you need any more information, please come to any of the YAM team. This Saturday, I think we only have 2 of our resident freshers. We've got our freshers day out. We're going to Box Park or Battle Box. We'll let you know details. Girls, we've got the women's sharing this Wednesday coming up. So 7:30 YAM room. And then we've got food and tasbeha later. All right, it's time to pray.
Let's pray, guys. In the name of the Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit, one God, amen. We thank you, God, for everything you're doing for us. We thank you, God, because you have given us so much knowledge and opportunities that we can actually understand how beautiful your creation is. We bow down in front of you and we thank you because you are a great master and engineer in how you created us and created our bodies. And people stay for years trying to understand and study every one or two organs of your creation, and still we don't understand everything. But what we understand, what we try to work with, is to work with people, get their life better and much better. But at the end of the day, we know that within your hands and from your hands we accept life, and we accept when you take them back again. So we thank you, Lord, for every opportunity and every gift that you give to us. Please, God, continue to bless each and every person working in your church, serving and trying to help in each way or shape or form. Accept us into your kingdom. Accept all of our prayers and service through the intercession of Virgin Mary, Archangel Michael, and my Father, the apostles, and my Father, the martyrs. Hear us when we say thankfully and joyfully, Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come. Thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread. Forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those trespassing against us. Lead us not to temptation, but deliver us from evil. Through Jesus Christ our Lord. For thine the kingdom, the power, the glory forever. Thank you, guys. Food and tasbih.